Okay, I think I'll get started. Feel free to keep introducing yourselves in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here. Before we dive into it, I'm just going to make some quick housekeeping notes. First, thank you to our partner World Beyond War for hosting this Zoom and being an active partner in this Warheads to Windmills Coalition. We're going to ask that you keep your mics off throughout this webinar. There will be space for questions throughout the program. Please put those questions in the Q&A box. Myself or Greta will pass them along to our speakers. And we are recording this webinar. My name is Anduin DeVos. I am a campaigner for the Warheads to Windmills Coalition. We build connections between peace and climate groups with our focus on addressing nuclear weapons and climate change together. We strive for the elimination of nuclear weapons and fossil fuels by putting pressure on the corporations most responsible for perpetuating the threats of nuclear war and the threat of climate catastrophe, either one of which could make this planet inhabitable for all humans and other species. These deeply interconnected existential threats both have intimate links to what is going on right now in Palestine. From the nuclear weapons companies supplying the tools of indiscriminate destruction to the increased nuclear threats by Israel and the energy apartheid aided by fossil fuel giant Chevron. It is crucial to build solidarity and connections across these campaigns, not only for the sustainability and strength of a movement, but also for the lessons we can learn from each other. So I'm incredibly pleased to welcome you all to this event, where we will share 3 stories of municipal divestment campaigns that built up pressure on the companies and governments driving the damage and harm to people and the planet. These are successful campaigns from around the country. Following their stories, there will be Q&A, and then we will move on to a panel of speakers representing organizations offering expert advice and tools on how you can make divestment campaigns happen in your communities. Excuse me. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Cheryl Davila. Cheryl is the former council member of District 2 of the city of Berkeley. Cheryl was elected in 2016, and during her term, she was proud to author the Climate Emergency Declaration and Fossil Fuel-Free Resolution. Cheryl also changed the city limit signs to Welcome to the City of Berkeley, Ohlone territory in 2018. As the only Black woman on the city council, former council member Davila took a strong stance for equity, building community through unity and respect. Prior to her city council term, she also served on the City of Berkeley's Human Welfare Community Action Commission, where she called for the protection of Palestinian human rights, authoring a resolution to divest from Israel apartheid. Cheryl, please tell us your success with the fossil fuel divestment in the City of Berkeley. I'll open the floor to you.
Thank you, and thank you. I'm happy to be here. Good afternoon and good evening to some of you, depending on your location. Like she said, I'm Cheryl Davila, the former council member for the City of Berkeley, and I'm also founder of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force. And I'm honored and humbled to be here with all of you and the other panelists and the other speakers. And we're all addressing the climate crisis and divestment from fossil fuels and nuclear catastrophes. And then I also want to thank the American Friends Service Committee and Warheads to Windmills Coalition and the World Beyond War and Nuclear Ban USA for bringing us all together. So my story is in 2014, I was on the Human Welfare and Community Action Commission, and I brought up on the commission divestment from Israel apartheid because I knew Berkeley divested once, they could do it again. So I thought. And I brought that up and I brought together a whole bunch of people, although I didn't know too much about it, but I just reached out to one organization and they put me in touch with another organization. And then all of a sudden there were 15 organizations sitting at a table trying to get Berkeley to divest from Israel apartheid. We weren't successful in that. I actually was removed from the commission for bringing it up, received an ultimatum. After a year of it being on the commission agenda, the week of the vote of the resolution, I was given an ultimatum to remove it or be removed. And so that happened. I was removed. I got back on. They removed me again. I got back on. And then I beat the 12-year incumbent that took me off the commission, and I was the unexpected victory um, in the city of Berkeley. So that's how I got to be a council member, by divesting, trying to get Berkeley to divest from Israel apartheid. And then when I was on council, my son, Armando, um, asked me to meet with some people about, climate emergency. And I was like, he had Googled climate emergency, and he found out that the people, we were in LA at the time visiting my mother-in-law for her birthday, and the people that were doing the climate emergency declarations, trying to get other people to do it, were right there. So we met with them. And that's how I got to be a climate champion for the city of Berkeley, or got Berkeley to be a climate champion. And now, like, more than 2,600, 2,300 governments around the world have declared climate emergencies. And at the same time, we passed a fossil fuel free city resolution for the city of Berkeley, but they um, put it towards a commission, the Energy Commission and the Transportation Commission, where it sat there for most of the time I was on the council. And I believe it did get through, but not the same exact version of what we put forth. But, if it wasn't for the organizing of, my son getting me to take on climate and understand how fossil fuels and all these things are related, I don't know what I would have done, because he went to these different organizations, 350 and Sunrise, and all these different Bay Area local climate action activists, and told them, hey, my mom's on the Berkeley City Council now. Do you guys want to help us get this climate emergency declaration passed and fossil fuel free city resolution passed? And they all jumped on board. And that's was amazing, because they would come to our meetings, and like literally we would have 30, 40 people in the 2180 Milvia on the sixth floor, or whatever office or conference room they gave us, to talk about this and get this done. And it was just incredible to see all the people that came together, and how we all organized and packed the city council meeting that night, and passed the declaration for climate emergency and the fossil fuel free resolution. And and um and then, like, we formed the climate emergency mobilization task force. We also had an event on fossil fuel free Bay Area summit in 2021, and that was amazing. We talked to all different kinds of folks in Richmond, from protecting the land and centering, transforming our communities, and we had all these people, Stand.Earth, the now mayor of Richmond, Eduardo Martinez, talking about, you know, how Richmond's impacted and how they transform their community. And we've been going strong with the climate emergency mobilization task force and educating folks on the climate emergency and all the different ways it impacts us on a daily, and educating folks with our virtual summit series. We just had one on the 21st of March, which was the last one of 5 in the series. And that was climate, youth and seniors. And we're going to start out in July with climate and being prepared. And then we're going to go on to climate and degrowth, and we have some topics coming up. So stay tuned for all that. But it's important to stay together and be in solidarity with all the organizations that you can in these tumultuous times. The fossil fuel industry has created unprecedented financial and health risks to cities and frontline communities. And now we have 47 that's gonna embolden them to continue their destruction of our marginalized communities and all of us, because it affects all of us. And we have to make a just transition away from fossil fuels to create a regenerative economy. And we have to say no to gas drilling, no to fracking, no to coal, and keep it in the ground. So if you agree with me, put that in the chat and say no to all these things that are impacting our lives, our health, and our well-being. And also, we are in tumultuous times, and we have to remember to find the joy that we can when we can, and to love ourselves, honor ourselves, forgive ourselves, and to keep on keeping on, because the challenges there are so many right now. But like doing things like this today brings me joy and comfort to hear and see all of you here that are trying to do something to change and move us away from fossil fuels, nuclear catastrophe, and addressing the climate crisis. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. What an incredible story. I think it's so great to see how you continued the momentum after the divestment resolution with this climate emergency mobilization task force. I want to just say if there's any specific questions for Cheryl at this time, please put them in the Q&A box, and we will have more time for Q&A after the other two divestment speakers. I do see one question in the chat from Timon asking more about this task force. Is it an official body? How is it structured? If you could speak a little bit to that.
We've been around we're in our 6th year. We just had an anniversary on February 9th. We've had 5 virtual summit series. We're coming up with our 6th. So we're a group of, actually the steering committee is small and mighty. There's 3 people, one from the United Nations Association East Bay and one from 350 East Bay. And we also do an Alameda County climate scorecard. We're on a 3rd version of that, which will be released at our general meeting. But the CEMTF is consisted of some electeds, NGOs, CBOs, activists. We never know who's going to show up to our general meetings. It's always a different group of folks, some of the same, but we generally get around 60 to 100 people at the virtual summit series, and over sometimes up to 200 plus registrants. So, and we send out all our videos. You can go to CEMTF.org under resources and see all of our YouTube, and we're also on YouTube. All of our recordings are there. And we've had some amazing speakers. And if I do say so myself, they're pretty great and very, very educational. You'll be very happy and pleasantly surprised, I believe, when you're watching. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Okay, I do see one more specific question, and then we'll move on to our next speaker. just about what were the specific commitments Berkeley made with this fossil fuel divestment resolution, and has that been monitored to see if they're honoring their commitment?
Oh, you're
You are
muted,
muted.
Cheryl.
Sorry.
So sorry. That's a good question. And today I was, I had links to all my legislation, and then the city changed their website and didn't link the links, which is kind of lame. Well, of course, it's understandable, but not how I would have worked that out. But so I was trying to find out today, like or for the last couple of days, like where it landed and what. But I know Berkeley has a climate action plan that they do follow up on every few years. And I know they've put a lot of the bike things in it. I couldn't find the final because it went through transportation and the energy, and then it came back to council. So that I wasn't able to figure out before this meeting today. I apologize.
That's all right. That's perfectly all right. We understand it's hard to track those things, of course. All right. So there will be more time for the rest of these questions. We see. Also, feel free as speakers to answer them, to type your answers in. I believe you'll be able to answer them in the Q&A if they're specific to you. Otherwise, we'll have a panel for the three of you to answer these questions after. So now I'll move on to our next speaker, Anthony Donovan. Anthony is an active peace advocate. He's a member of Nuclear Ban US, Catholic Worker New York, War Resisters League, Pax Christi New York, and an associate member of the Veterans for Peace, Peace Action, and the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, among other organizations. Anthony is an author of World Peace, based on 50 UN diplomat interviews in 1983, selling out its edition at the UN bookstore. He's also a director and producer of award-winning documentary Dialogues and other documentaries. He was part of the team that called for and pulled together the resolution which eventually passed the New York City Council to support the TPNW and divest New York City pensions from the nuclear weapons industry, which is what he will tell us about today. So I'll pass the floor over to Anthony.
Thank you very much. It is an honor. And Cheryl, thank you. That was great. Should I start off right away on the slideshow? I have a little slideshow, and so I just hit share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Beautiful. Okay. Share. Beautiful. I think that's it. So, Cheryl, I deeply appreciated you when you started talking about keeping joy in your life and in our lives. So this is a band that I've been playing. This is probably a shot 13 years ago, but it's music. It's very important for all of us to keep joy because there's so much going on. And I actually wanted to start with a moment of not necessarily silence, but just to dedicate a moment to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and to all in the Middle East, that peace can come into their hearts, the suffering, we need to get the lawfulness back, international law. Without that, if we continue down this path, I think all our great efforts to deal with nuclear weapons, etc., will be for naught. We really need the law. So the great thing about the TPNW is we entered that realm, and what a joy that was. So yes, on my shirt, the shirt, it says peace is a conflict of interest. So this shirt I've had for about 20 years now, and to me, there's a little $ on the word interest. Peace is a conflict of interest, and I'm afraid that's quite true. So we're talking about divestment. We're talking about peace. So this is the city council that passed the resolution. And I don't know if you can read it. That's okay. I'll just read. The resolution calls on New York City Comptroller to instruct the pension funds of public employees of New York City to divest from and avoid any financial exposure to companies involved in the production, and the maintenance of nuclear weapons, reaffirming New York City as a nuclear weapons-free zone, joining the ICANN Cities Appeal, and calling on the United States to support and join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. What a great, a great thing. So how did we get here? I have to say that despite getting this through overwhelmingly that the work is still cut out for us. We are not divested yet. We're working with the comptroller to do that. It's really in the hands of the 5 pension funds. These are police, firemen, teachers, city workers. And so each of the boards of those need to be spoken with and convinced as well, because it's tough giving up money. Um, I, I, a shot of Wall Street. My first bloodletting uh, in this whole realm of activism started here. I came down to listen to some veterans that just returned from Vietnam. I wanted to hear what was happening, and we were surrounded by thousands of calling for the war to end. This is 1970, June. I was fairly innocent, and I didn't really know anything about the connection of money and war. I just wanted to find out from the horse's mouth what was going on. So thousands of construction workers were tipped off. It was happening. They surrounded us, and I think 80 people went to the hospital. And from the windows of Wall Street, people were cheering this beating on and throwing graffiti out on top of us as we were cornered and beat up. But so why were the veterans coming here? They knew. I was a young kid. I was 18, but we have lots of elders that know about war, about nuclear weapons. So I was really looking up to these souls. And so I'm just happy to be with people right now uh, in this that know already about why we need to and what's connected uh, to our instruments of devastation, warheads to windmills, nose, World Beyond War, friends. They gave me my first nonviolent training. So friends, thank you so much. Um, I'm going to skip to Amalgamated Bank because the first thing I ask people when talking about divestment is, okay, we want corporations to divest. We want our universities to divest. But I have to ask people, are you divested? You have a checking account, you have a savings account. Your money is used as a conduit by our banks. And there's only one national bank that I know of. In 2010, um, before Occupy Wall Street, I did an article for a Catholic Worker paper on the banks in our area, 12 different banks. And I came across Amalgamated. I did not know anything about Amalgamated. This is a celebration of their 100th year. This is 2 years ago. And who's at the podium right there happens to be our comptroller of New York City, who our resolution was pointed to. So, so this is one place you can switch. I did after 40 years of being with a bank, Chase Bank. It seemed really impossible, but it was much easier. So I just ask individuals out there. It just gives you more strength when you are campaigning for divestment in your colleges or wherever. If you're with Citi or Wells Fargo or Bank of America or any of our banks, you're helping these huge corporations with the flow of money to and from them. So Amalgamated Bank has, and I don't work for Amalgamated Bank, by the way. I have anything to do with them except I really love them. They also were the first bank to divest from fossil fuels a long time ago. I believe, the first bank. And LGBTQ issues, They're the first bank that raised their minimum wage. But really importantly, and to the right of your screen, perhaps, I don't know if you can see, but I will go to the next slide. You'll see this, the first bank to actually put up policies. They do not allow any lending to or use of their assets for any company that deals with armaments. So we're talking about ammunition, we're talking about handguns, we're talking about F-16s, we're talking about the bombs that are dropping in Ukraine and in Palestine and anywhere else in the world. No nuclear weapon, any company dealing with nuclear weapons. So it's a beautiful thing. So I ask people to think about that, divest ourselves first. There are other ways of doing it, of course. And if you have personal funds, you can go to your personal financial advisor. So this was a beautiful moment in 2017, just a reminder. When this passed, this is the treaty passing, this is the moment it passed. It can make me cry because it was an astounding moment. Many of us had waited all our lifetimes to see something like this. Even though this is passed, we're far from it. But working towards divestment, I think, is really cool. So how do we work towards divestment? By everything you are doing already is what does the trick. Is your passion about this issue and about war itself, but about nuclear weapons. Everyone you speak to, it affects them and makes them think. So thank you. This is the stuff that we had to bring to our council members. These kind of facts. There was tremendous testimony for months to make this treaty happen. Over years, testimony was brought. So that is accessible to us. I'm going to zip back to time. These two men at the height of the Cold War got together. I think we have to do something. If you want to divest, do something every time you hear the word enemy. Russia, China, Iran, please, let's hold off from Iran. Start embracing the other, and let's let our representatives know. Let's pull back from the word enemy, because that word is what fuels the investments and keeps the money flowing to all these arms companies and the people that make nuclear weapons. This is inside City Hall on the day of our hearing. It took 2 years to get here, but I'm putting this up because of two reasons. The man on the left is a distant cousin to Gorbachev. This is Michael Gorbachev, the person on the left. And to the right is how this really happened. To the right is our Brendan Fay. Brendan, to me, it's how do we do things? It's through relationships. Brendan Fay worked with a council member for many decades, actually, on issues of gay rights. They formed a unique bond. This unique bond, when it came time to come to the council, wow, is that my time almost up? Okay, so it's really about relationships. And Brendan Fay knew this council member. We had series of meetings with him. He said, you know what? I'm gonna write a letter to the comptroller. And for that, we had to get a number of other council members to sign on to his letter. After that letter went through and there wasn't much action, we decided to do a resolution. So I will jump ahead and to the moment. Well, this is a moment in a pub with council member Drone speaking to an Irish representative and he, at this moment, about 1 minute after this photograph, Danny Drone, who is our finance chair in our city council, said, why don't we do a resolution? So it is these personal contacts that really make things happen. And so with that, and there's a team, you can see to the left some of the team members, Divest New York Nukes, and this was right before that pub meeting. And there's the King plate. Okay, I will end, and just there's Danny Drum during that council meeting, and there's a shot of us inside there, and Timon and several other people on this Zoom were in this hole at the time. So you can, what do I do to get out of my, oh, stop share? Great.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
I'm sorry. Wow, that was about 1/10 of my slideshow. God
Yeah, I
bless you.
see a lot of interest in your slides from the chat, so maybe we can try and share those afterwards. But thank you so much, Anthony, for that wonderful story and for
Yeah.
really speaking to the heart of this issue, which is investing in our values and using our finances to take a stand. I really agree that divestment campaigns are built on norms around public acceptability. So I really appreciated what you were saying in the story you were telling there. Let's see if there's any specific questions for Anthony at the moment. Oh, from Tim, if you could just give a quick update of where this stands today, what still needs to be done. I know you said it was still in progress.
Yes, it's stuck. We need to we need to convince and speak with the actual pension fund boards. And it seems that the controller is not willing. He says he's not able. He says, look, I can't tell the boards what to do. It's their money. The teachers want good returns. The policemen want good returns. The firemen. So I knew, even if we passed this great resolution, which I think it was like 42 council members out of 51 in New York City. It's tremendous outpouring, and also I'll send you the link of there's 60 testimonies of experts on this day. So there's a lot. We have a lot of resources to fall back on, and including 15 past resolutions dealing with nuclear weapons, which were part of the history. When you're convincing people, why should we do this? Look into your town and your city's history. It won't be online, probably. You have to probably dig in boxes wherever the archives are for your city council. You'll have to do some digging. They didn't have computers in the 70s and 80s. So where it stands is I've called and asked to make presentation to some of these boards. That hasn't happened yet, but that's what we're working on. All these years later, I thought we didn't understand the system too well. It seems. I think we thought that the comptroller, who's an elected official, had a lot more power than he seems to, and the mayor. But he's pretty much said, look, I can't tell them what to do. It's their decision. And so we're still working with him. And he's running for mayor right now. Brad's running for mayor. So if he becomes mayor, that'd be good because he understands this issue very well. So thank you. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I see some other great questions that I will pass off to the full panel. I think that would be great to get answers from
Sure.
the panel afterwards for those other
Okay, very
questions.
good.
So I'm going to move on to our next speaker.
Excellent.
Suhaya Al-Matri is a Palestinian mother, a human rights advocate, and community organizer for Palestine and native land back on Wabanaki territory, so-called Maine. Their coalition, a local coalition, is growing of over 14 organizations and hundreds of organizers who plan events and campaigns across the state for the liberation of the Palestinian people, while connecting the struggle to local and international movements for justice. Sulhaya will share with us about getting the city of Portland, Maine, to agree to divest from complicity in the genocide of the Palestinian people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. So I have 10 minutes, and I'm going to try to be as practical as possible, because about a year and a half ago, I was racking, actually, a few of us were racking our brains and never had done anything like this, but we knew that we had to do something, and something really fast. And so I'm here to say that you don't need to have had any experience in organizing or with any campaign like this to make something like what happened in Portland, Belfast, Maine, and even Brunswick, Maine happen. And I'm just gonna add in that something I learned along the way is we do divestment right now for these headlines. And so it's important to compromise and important to understand that the vehicles out there to practically divest are still being developed. And these headlines are what inspire others to divest and do the work. So in part, we do this to create an avalanche effect. And I learned that. So some frequently asked questions that we asked of ourselves for months. Do we need to learn to decipher financial portfolios? Did we need to prove that the town or municipality or university or college was actually invested in these corporations? And did we need, hold on one second. Okay, great. Did we need to escalate and risk arrest? So the answer to all of these we learned was no. No, no, and no. We wasted a lot of time with FOIA requests, the Freedom of Information Act requests. Pretty much what I'm learning, and I'm still new at this, and there's a panel of experts here later, but what I'm learning is that most places are invested. And if they are not, the ask can still be, can you remain divested? So it does not, it takes a lot of time and resources to understand exactly what places are invested in. You don't need to do that. And so we learned that. And we also learned to start with building an organization and directly negotiating with, in this case, city council members. Lots of us wanted to start with protesting, making noise, disclose. And what we learned is if you live in a town like Portland or any place where people know people, our neighbors, our grocers, our farmers all knew each member of the Portland City Council and Belfast City Council and Brunswick City Council. So we took that time to get to know who our council members were, and found people who could give us friendly intros. And so this is here. Why is this huge number here? It's there to explain in a real practical sense why it was so important to negotiate directly with the target before we started screaming things outside of, their doors and offices. 3,000 were the number of APAC sponsored emails that went to each council member within 3 hours of them finding out that divestment in Portland was on the agenda. So the meeting agenda came out on a Friday, and the meeting was scheduled to take place on a Tuesday, I think. And so we had been very careful to just be directly speaking with organizations, businesses that we knew, city council members. If we had declared, that we were demanding the city council to divest before doing all that background and ground, work, I'm pretty sure that all of our counselors might have been scared off, by this number of emails pouring in. And so let me just check time, but so what we found, and I'll drop a link in the chat right now. I'm going to be referencing a few documents, and I have them all in here. Like I said, we had friendly introductions to all of our council members. Really important that if you have anyone who is very impacted by what's happening in Palestine, Sudan, whatever the divestment campaign is, it feels important that you center those people's experiences, and if they're willing and able, inviting them and having them lead in those meetings with council members. And so those were friendly intros. And then we came into every council meeting, one-on-one meetings with 3 documents. And the tone of our meeting was not, can you do this? Will you do this? Will you help us? The tone was, what do you need? How can we help you be brave here? And we had already done a little bit of that work for them. We developed a brief on what BDS is. Is it legal in Maine? What exactly does it mean? And we also, we drafted a draft resolution. And we also were very clear that we were not married to this resolution. We understood, that they're busy, and this is just an idea of how, like, what we're talking about here, just, to make it more concrete. And in drafting that resolution, we drafted it in the exact same language formatting that all previous Portland City Council resolutions were drafted in. We really wanted to make it real. And then the other thing we came in with, without sounding any alarms, we had organized about, at that point, 100 Portland based businesses and organizations in support of this. And so in every council meeting, we went in with, how can we help you be brave? Everyone wants you to do this. And so those are just 3 things we came in with, and copies of all of that are in the chat. So I think I went through a lot of this as I was in the previous slides, but important to choose your, or I learned it was important to choose where we were going to target wisely. Portland is the biggest city in Maine. It made sense to choose, that town. So many people worked on all of these campaigns. You do not need to live there to work on a campaign there, as long as there are residents who are interested in participating. And so I think I talked about all of that already. And so here's something we learned, that you need, I think a lot of places need a sponsor. So it's not enough, to just have a draft resolution. You actually need one or two or all council members to step up and say, I will sponsor this. I will put this on an agenda. And that was kind of the hardest part of this whole process. People were generally on board. Our sponsor really didn't emerge until later. And it's kind of a tall order asking, can you sponsor this? And so we approach all meetings with, what do you need to be brave to vote yes for this? Do you know of anyone on the council who might be willing to sponsor this? And so not directly asking people and cornering them in those meetings, and then they would say, well, think about it, or maybe so-and-so, or I'll do it if no one else will, which is a total win. But our sponsor really didn't emerge until like 5 meetings in. And then it's about negotiating that resolution language. And here's where a lot of organizers will differ. Some of us want the perfect, strongest, hardest hitting language. And at that point, I believe only like under 5 municipalities had divested from Israel and violence and apartheid. So I got a lot of help from AFSC, who you'll hear from in a bit, but really important to not lose sight of the importance of achieving those headlines. And then of course, sending and being prepared to send press releases out to hundreds of journalists, because that really is the win here. It's inspiring others to do this and forcing the financial market to develop, the tools it needs to develop to actually practically divest in real ways. And I think that's about it. Yeah. This whole process for us started in May of 2024, and Portland passed it in September of that year. And Belfast was a 2-month campaign. These things don't have to take long if you do legwork and you make it easy for them. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suhaya. That was an incredibly practical and impressive account of the organizing of your coalition. I'm in awe of the work and the resources that you were able to share there. I think the support and mobilization in your community and that framework of empowering bravery is incredible advice for this kind of organizing. At this time, are there any specific questions for Suhaya? And past specific questions, we have time to take questions for the entire 3 speakers, Anthony and Cheryl.
Yeah, one of the questions that any of the panelists can answer, which is, one of the #1 questions that we always get, is, how do you respond about, will we lose profit? How can you respond to that and say that it's just as financially viable to, invest in positive things? Anyone want to take that? Yeah, Anthony, you can go first.
Well, sure. Amalgamated Bank has pretty much proved that they're doing really well by not investing in fossil fuels and not investing in any armament company. So they are. It's great to have, and they showed up at the hearing and they provided testimony. But it's true. If you look, right now, if you're invested in Lockheed Martin, you are making some good money, but this is, you're investing in the end of our planet. And yeah, so that's, there are many instances of companies making good money, but it's also worth it, I think, worth losing a little bit if you have to, but we don't have to. So it does make sense to find investments that are really working for you. And yeah,
Thank you.
I can remember once, you know, with my 401k, I asked I don't know, it may have been Fidelity or one of those people, when we met, like, because I always put my money in mutual funds, and and they actually said that when you invest social responsibility, um that you can make just as much money. They don't talk about that much, but you can. You know, you don't have to lose anything. Um you might not gain as much, but you know, but you can still make gains. So you just have to I mean, yeah, ask the question.
Thank you. Did that come up in Portland, Soheya?
Yes, and AFSC helped us tremendously with an answer to that, and that was just in terms of towns and municipalities, they're not going to be heavily invested in these corporations. And also, we encourage council members to not speculate what any of this might mean. You know, they're not finance experts here. You know, just do the right thing and we'll take it one step at a time. I will say that our counselors in all municipalities appreciated a list. And I know that the goal is to divest in an ongoing way, and our resolution still provides for that, but we did squeeze in, at minimum, you will divest from this, you know, list. And so it just made it like smaller, more real. They could check in, you know, with folks and be like, are we invested in any of these 100 corporations? In the case of Portland, they were invested in 2 of them. In the case of Belfast, you know, they were invested in 1 of them. So, and that I thought was actually really helpful because it distracted everyone then a bit to be like, oh, this is easy. We're only invested in 2 of them or 1 of them. Okay. And then, yeah, so I think making it small, actionable, really was helpful on our end.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your point that you do not have to be an expert. I mean, I've been working on divestment for a while, and there's so many conversations in different campaigns where, you know, the elected officials can try to sort of pin you in a corner and ask you lots of different really complicated financial questions. Like, we don't need to go there, you know? So I appreciated that you emphasized that. And while we have you on the mic, there's another question. If you could just speak a little bit to how the implementation process is going in Portland.
The implementation process is ongoing based on the resolution. It will always review its divestments and portfolio with an eye, you know, towards that list. And it already divested itself of those 2 corporations that were on the list. So some divestment did happen, and as we all know, it's an ongoing, you know, thing, but the win is getting institutions to commit to doing it, however long it might take.
Great, thank you. Maybe we can squeeze in one more question before we go to the next section. So this is a question from Carol. Any of our panelists are welcome to speak to this, and this comes up very frequently. There's a few aspects here. One is that Carroll City Council members stated that the city is not invested in Israel and does not make decisions or statements on international politics or things that will be divisive for the community. How can we respond to that? And I see Dove is writing a response in the Q&A, but our panelists are also welcome to chime in.
You know, it's like I'm so tired of that divisive explanation comment. You know, it's divisive not to address it. You
Thank
know, because you know, none of us are free until Palestine is free, honestly. And we have to divest from all these things that are really killing us. And now we have an opportunity to make a change because the whole world knows how everything is co-opted, corrupted, bought, sold, and delivered to AIPAC. And more people are in support of a free Palestine at this time. So we have to keep up the momentum, get our cities to divest, and you know, don't be afraid to speak up about it and call people out on their, you know, I won't say the bad BS word, but you know, their BS, because you know, we can't sit back. You know, I never wanted to do this, wasn't my part of my plan, and I'm in meetings and everything, you know, so many, it's ridiculous, but and I don't mind, honestly, because I feel like I'm here for this purpose right now, you know. And people stop me all the time. Like I just walked around to meet this woman at the post office. I got stopped like 3 times by people that, well, one woman I knew, one guy didn't know me, but I mean, I didn't know him, but he knew me. And they appreciate when you speak up. There, you don't know who's listening, who's on TV, who's on the radio, or like, you know, like they're watching the city council meetings. You don't know, but your words and your voice is so important, especially now that we can't be silent. We have to speak up. So we have to do what, and you know, it might be uncomfortable for us. I go through serious disrespect every time I go into those council meetings. But you know, it's like I'm just shaking that stuff off, you know, and keep it moving because, you know, if they're uncomfortable, that's good. They need to be uncomfortable, you know. And we can't be afraid. People used to think I was afraid all the time, but I don't know. Palestine has given me courage. And when I get to the point where I don't want to do something, I'm like, those Palestinians are in there doing all these things and they're dying and they're getting murdered. And that just motivates me and gives me the courage to keep it moving. So that's what I have to say. Keep it moving. Don't get discouraged.
Thank you. Any other responses on that question, Anthony?
Oh, well, just want to thank you, Cheryl, for keeping it moving. God bless you. Thank you for the courage. I I remember conflict resolution stuff from a long time ago. Separate the person from the problem, the nation from the problem, but it's really hard. So I don't say the word Israel too much. I do say Zionists more often, and I do say I do say genocide freely, but it's this mass slaughter of people when we're talking about that issue. It's just the mass slaughter of people, but I try to listen. I try to listen, and I think that is key. And Suleila, thank you very much. I loved your approach. You definitely have to make a personal contact when we call. I called all 51 council members, and our group did. We all would call them and try to develop a relationship with each council member, find out what their interests were. My council member, I worked for 10 years with her on housing issues. So I already knew her very well. So asking her to do this little thing with me on nuclear weapons, not a little thing. It took her about 1 minute. So it is really important to have a personal relationship. The person who was our sponsor for this resolution, you're right also, it's really hard to get the sponsor. That's the initial thing. It wasn't hard for Brendan, was like, had been working with this sponsor for years on other issues. They had already developed a deep personal trust. So all the things that you care about, try to link them in, find out what that council member cares about, and listen, and that's how we win the hearts of the others, and rightfully stick with what is right. We know in this group here, don't have to tell anyone how wrong it is to spend trillions on nuclear weapons that threaten the entire planet. So yeah, it's that personal connection. That's how we get things done. All the calls, I would make lists of calls and check off everything. So God bless, and thank you, Cheryl, for that sharing, and Sohaila, thank you for that
Thank
work.
you guys. Thank you all so much to that first panel of speakers. I want to give Sohaila a quick moment if you have any wrapping thoughts before we do have to move on very quickly to our next panel. All right, perfect. Thank you all so much for sharing those stories. They were truly incredible. And now we have some wonderful panelists representing organizations that are dedicated to making divestment work possible for you. Sohaila already mentioned the work that AFSC did to help that effort. And we'll take questions for them after they present. So let me introduce our panel. David Swanson, the Executive Director of World Beyond War. Eamon Wallace, the Executive Director of Nuclear Ban US and founder of the Warheads to Windmills Coalition. And Dov Baum, Director of Corporate Accountability and Research at the Action Center for Corporate Accountability of the American Friends Service Committee. So I will pass this over to David.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation so far. Agreed with everything, but also learned a lot. The one of those three speakers told me beforehand I would have heard it all before, but I simply had not. I learned a great deal. I'm going to try to share my screen, a little PowerPoint here. Hope you can see it. It is about the headlines. It is about the victories. It is about compromising to get the victory. But we have to spread the word about these victories. We have to celebrate them. We have to mark them with anniversaries. We have to make them part of the positive description of our cities. It's a city that has done this. We have to use these for education, because this is, half the purpose is education. And then we have to do just what we're doing here, spread this video, but learn from these examples, because they're all a little bit different, what works and fails in each place, and figure out how to replicate it in your place. See if I can make it go to the next slide. Completely agree that it's useful to do a lot of research before you get started, including finding out if there's a legal obligation to maximize profit, or if they're going to pretend there is, but there isn't really. And if there is, whether they could maximize profit without weapons or not. It's going to take some research, and some of these things you don't have to research, and some you do, depending on the location and who makes the decision, and how transparent the information is, and so forth. I think it's also interesting that we're talking here about campaigns around nuclear weapons, around fossil fuels, around weapons used by Israel, etc. In the case of my town, we got divestment from all weapons and fossil fuels together as one thing, and refused to let them separate it, because they would have just divested from fossil fuels. And at World Beyond War, we love the educational aspect of why you should divest from all weapons. And then you can divest from a list of weapons that automatically updates every year, and they have to go with the updated list. And so it lasts. The one thing I worry about is, how to use the public excitement around the current war without putting yourself up against all the false accusations of anti-Semitism and so forth, but also to make it something that lasts, because pretty much all the big weapons companies are involved in Israel's wars. So I'm not worried about missing weapons companies. I'm just worried about teaching the right lesson and making it last. But anything like this that you can get divestment on is very much to the good. You can go, and I should say Greta Zaro is our expert on divestment. She's just also our expert on moderating Zoom calls. But if you go to this website, WorldBeyondWar.org/divest, you'll start to see some of the tools we have to offer, including how to contact us and get specific help from us, because we want to work with your campaign. These are images that are just screenshots from pieces of this website, WorldBeyondWar.org/divest. A little bit further down, you have links to a number of successes, including Charlottesville, where I live. Then you come to a whole bunch of tools. Some are World Beyond Wars, some are Code Pink, some are AFSCs, some are other groups. There are very useful fact sheets and flyers and databases of weapons and of banks and of investment funds. You'll learn a great deal with these links. If anybody has any key links that they think aren't here, please share them with us. Then you'll come to a number of videos like this one discussing how to do divestment, that can be very, very useful to doing a divestment campaign. And at the bottom of the page, contact us, which we hope everyone will, who wants to work on a divestment campaign. Here in Charlottesville, this is, going through one of those links further up the page to one of the successes. You get to WorldBeyondWar.org/divest-Seville. We did all sorts of public education, demonstrations, flyers, petitions, media interviews, and press events, and op-eds, and letters to editor, and so forth. And we, from experience of passing other resolutions and ordinances on other things, knew what to do with this city council and how to pack a city council meeting, how to dominate the speaking period for the public, etc. You can watch the videos of what we did on this website. Ask people to stand up if they agree, and have the whole room stand up and hold up signs. Put a lot of pressure so that it's clear that the public demands it. And if you have no opposition or virtually no opposition, then it becomes very difficult for an elected official to resist it. So I could talk, I could answer any questions in particular about what we did in Charlottesville, but one thing that we did was to get them to divest from all weapons and all fossil fuels with their operating budget, which was subject to the control of the elected officials called city council members, and agree to put off for the time being getting them to divest from their pension fund, which in a lot of localities you can't go after at all because it's done at the state level and you have to go to the state. In Charlottesville you could, but it's overseen by people who are not subject to elections or public pressure of any sort. And so we continued and did not yet succeed in getting divestment from the pension fund, but we took the half of victory, took the headline, did more educational events, celebrated Charlottesville as a place that's divested from weapons and fossil fuels, and moved on to demilitarizing the police and all the other things we've been getting them to do in the years since that one. So thanks.
Thank you so much, David. And we'll take questions for this whole panel at the end. So if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And now I will pass it over to Timon.
Right. Well, thank you all. Thanks, David, for that quick tour de force of the divestment from military. As Anduin mentioned at the beginning, the Warheads to Windmills campaign is specifically targeting the nuclear weapons and climate companies, but they're all the same companies. I really love the framing of how can we help you to be brave. I think that's a great way to look at it, and we're trying to get all these entities to do just push them to do the maximum they can do, and that depends on where you are and what the situation is, what you can push them to actually do. So I'm just going to share very quickly 4 pages from our website. The first one is about divestment from nuclear weapons, and we have, and I'll put the link in the chat there for you. But this page has loads of resources for all kinds of divestment from your bank, as Anthony was talking about, from colleges, faith communities, and hospitals. And there is a section about towns and cities with some ideas about different things you can do. As I said, it depends on your situation or the situation that you're going after. As Suela was saying, not necessarily your own town, but wherever you're trying to get divestment going, you need to know what's possible and then push them a little bit further. So this is all the information about the different companies and the different ways that you can divest from there. I don't know if this will jump automatically to my next page. Can you see the fossil fuel companies now?
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay. So this is our divestment from fossil fuel page. And again, all kinds of resources out there, including some that have already been mentioned. And Dove will be talking about the AFSC resources as well. But here's a really great one from Boulder, Colorado, that we've used. So these are resources in general about divestment, give you some ideas, give you some tips and links to other places. We also have this page, which again I'll put in the chat, about the different types of, so all the divestment that we've heard tonight so far, I think, has all been resolutions, which is one type of action, and there are different types of resolutions. Our own town in Northampton, Massachusetts, passed the mayor passed an executive order. We've got examples of all these different kinds, but I mean, resolutions and executive orders are great, as Suela was saying, for the publicity, the headlines, but to really push them to divest, there's also all the legal channels through bylaws, ordinances, getting it into the municipal code and so on. And many cities and towns have done that. So I wanted to just, again, we're trying to put more and more examples up on this website. It's not really complete yet, but I wanted to just share one draft bill that hasn't been passed anywhere, as far as I know. This was presented to our partners in Massachusetts for the state legislation. But this is a draft for cities and towns, and it's basically to go in. It's not a resolution. It requires them to actually make a decision to put it into the municipal code, which most states allow. Not every state, and you have to find out what the rules are. But you can make it more generic. So this is what I wanted to just end with. This draft says no investment of funds shall be made in stocks of blah, 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 which is engaged in prohibited activities as defined in this act. And so under here, you can put all the different things that are prohibited. And as David was saying, to make it last longer, and not just for the case of Palestine, for example. I mean, we've put in here manufacture, distribution or sale of weapons, blah, 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 intended for any party involved in plausible violations of the Genocide Convention, for example, or any other such activities as are clearly harmful to human life. But we've had campaigns working with the nuclear weapons issue, with the Gaza issue, with the fossil fuels, also with the gun legislation. So we've put that in there as well. And so we wanted to present this webinar in a way that really tried to bring together these different issues. David's example in Charlottesville is one of very few that I know of that have actually divested from a whole bunch of different things at once. But that's where we should be pushing and trying to get more cities and towns to take our values into our investment. That's what it's about. And all these things, we shouldn't have to list them all, but that there are different ways you can do that. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Tim. And then we'll pass to Dove Baum, who has been very active answering questions in the Q&A in the chat. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no problem. I will post in the chat again some of our resources. I work with the American Friends Service Committee, the Action Center for Corporate Accountability, and we focus on several issues, not just Palestine, also immigrant justice, peace and war, and mass incarceration, mass surveillance in the US. But really over the last year and a half, for obvious reasons, because of the genocide in Gaza, most of my work and the work of my colleagues was supporting divestment campaigns from Israeli apartheid, genocide, and occupation. The way we usually think about it is as introducing a human rights screen to the city council. It can be also on a county level. We have successes on the county level, and there are several campaigns now on the state level looking at state pension funds. As was said before by one of my colleagues here, state pension fund campaigns are harder. In fact, pension fund campaigns are always harder, but they're also more personal for people because this is our own personal retirement monies. So there is a lot of interest in such campaigns. The idea is, let's just stop for a moment and think, how does it work? If a small city is invested in some corporate bond, even something that looks like $1 million, and we all think, wow, $1 million is a lot of money. If that city sells off this bond or doesn't renew it when it expires, I don't think the city will have any impact on the company that issued the bond. So what is the impact of divestment? Why do we want cities or any institutional investor to divest? And that was, I think, part of the answer you already heard from Sorhia here from Portland. Divestment is a collective action. It is a movement. So what we're trying to do here is to create a new standard for corporate behavior through the creation of a new standard for responsible investment. So it's really not about one city divestment. It's about creating a momentum of city after city after city, community foundations, unions, universities, everything, everywhere, deciding we don't want to be invested in these harmful things. And there's only one divestment campaign. The one divestment campaign that brings us all together is we want our public monies to be invested in the well-being of our communities and the planet, and not in the destruction of communities and planet anywhere. That's it, and it can be done. And if that means that we see less, revenues in the short term on our investment, we already know that that's nonsense, because in a year or 2 or 5, which is not such long term, we will have externalities with the destruction of planet and communities around us that we will also have to pay for dearly, not just in money, but also in money. So let me share my screen and show you some of the resources we have created for such campaigns so that you will not have to start from scratch. I keep meeting folks organizing in different cities around the country, and they all do the research from scratch. They all try to figure out what is the divestment list from nothing, how to draft a resolution. They just make it up. A lot of work that they don't need to do because it's already been done for you. So I'll share my screen. Okay, so the first resource is a very short one. It's something that we need to update, and it will be updated in the next few months. But it's a good first toolkit. How to divest? What does it mean to divest? So first of all, we want there to be an investment policy statement, a new ethical investment policy for the city or county or state or union or whatever. And that is where we win. Even before we go into implementation or planning for disclosure or reporting, none of it matters, because what we're trying to do is to create a new norm. So when city after city introduces new policy, that is the win, like you heard from many speakers before me. Secondly, if you want to divest for Palestinian rights, this is the list. There is one list for the movement. This is the short list of the companies that have to be divested from, because they are the lost causes. You cannot engage with them. Others have tried before you. Many of them are weapons manufacturers. So you see that divestment from weapons is really very similar to divestment for Palestinian rights. Then there are some other companies, in fact, 6 right now. And this is the dynamic list. It changes all the time. You can see 2 of these companies are fossil fuel companies. And these are kind of semi-weapons companies: Caterpillar, Motorola, Palantir. So that's the list. And then there are some other non-Israeli companies. Most cities across the US are not invested outside of the US. In many, many states, there are real restrictions of what cities can and cannot be invested in. They are mostly invested in the US in short-term, highly rated bond instruments. So they wouldn't be invested in Israeli companies, so it's not really divestment from Israel. They wouldn't be invested in these companies. They would be invested in mostly in these and in weapons. And then also here you can listen to more webinars. If you want to learn more similar webinars, check them out. Really great webinars, and we'll add here as we go. And at the bottom of the page, you can see many examples of successes. Partial successes are successes. Achievements are achievements. We need to celebrate them wherever they are. And you can see there are many, many successes across the country that we need to celebrate, amplify, and duplicate wherever we are. Very quickly, let me show you a couple of more resources that are more in-depth than this. One is our flagship database. Here you can put in a name of a company and see what we know about it. Caterpillar is a good example. It's recommended for divestment, and here you can read why, and you can use it to create your information material to educate the treasurer. Yes. You can also upload here a list of holdings of any format of any investor and run the search, and this system will tell you what are you invested in, how are you exposed to these companies. And finally, you can put in a name of a mutual fund or a name of a mutual fund company. I love putting Vanguard because we hate Vanguard. And you can see here all of their funds, and each fund you can click on and see if it's red, which means it's invested in our divestment companies. And you can see sometimes they are even considered socially responsible funds, social index fund that is red. So just calling a fund socially responsible doesn't mean that they have divested from the companies that we care about. And you can click on it and learn more about that fund and why do we care about it. And last but not least, I want to recommend our help. We are here for you. So we have bi-weekly office hours. I put the link in the chat for this page where you can sign up for our office hours. Twice a week, we just, open a Zoom room and wait for you. This support room is not for individuals, it's for campaigns and groups that are planning or hoping to run campaigns, specifically for Palestinian rights. They can be divestment campaigns in any setting or boycott campaigns. And we can help, maybe. We can try to help. We sometimes do the research for you, sometimes help you think through some big obstacles. Maybe you're negotiating with council members. Maybe you are still looking for your council member. So we are here for you Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just come.
That's wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thanks to that panel, to David and Timon and Doug for all those incredible resources. I think that this is basically the toolkit for if you want to do this. This is all these resources that have been talked about here. At this time, we have time for some questions, although we are running close, so get them in if you have them.
Yeah, maybe we could go to Dove first for a question. And just, yeah, kudos to you, Dove, for all the work you're doing. It's really inspiring. So yeah, maybe you could speak a little bit more to this interplay between wanting to pass this overarching, policy statement that's kind of gonna cover all of our bases for future wars and future genocides, at the same time of wanting to be specific and say, these are the companies you should divest from.
I will answer to that, but I also see another question in the Q&A that is kind of interesting about implementation versus policy. So let's start with what you asked, Greta. The truth of the matter is that we really do care about all these other matters, We really do not want to invest in genocide anywhere. It's the truth. So the question is how to implement something like that. An investment manager or consultant would look at this requirement and say, I don't know, I don't have the tools. So what we are asking institutions to say, and in fact, AFSC itself has a policy like that, is to say we do not want to be invested in anything like that. So first of all, you put in an aspirational statement. Politicians love them, but I also love them because aspirations are good. They help direct us towards a certain direction. So we do not want to be invested in anything like that. What we do want to be invested in is the well-being of our communities and the planet. So start out by that. And then you say, to that effect, to the best of our abilities, to the best of our knowledge, we will refrain from investing in severe human rights violations, such as apartheid, genocide, and military occupation. So you give some examples that actually reveal the severity of the crimes we're talking about, So then we go into implementation, and here I'm switching to the other question that was in the Q&A. The statement in itself has power. When we create a new norm of what does it mean for us as a community to invest our collective earnings in our future, and we say we don't want to be invested in nuclear weapons, we don't want to be invested in more extraction, that in itself has also a financial impact, because the companies that are listed on these lists, they know they are on these lists, and they know that as more and more cities and states and foundations divest, and more instruments are developed that exclude these companies, they lose some of their potential investor universe and create some future risks for themselves. But what is more important is the companies that are not listed there. The companies that are not listed there do not want to get listed there. You create a new standard that other companies will try to stay away from because they know that this is controversial, this is bad for business. And that creates a new incentive that didn't exist before for companies not to get involved in such activities. And I'm talking about severe human rights violations. So companies can decide whether or not they take this contract. Google can decide whether or not it operates AI services for the Israeli military. This is a decision they are making today. We want to influence that decision this way. As for the implementation on the city level, it is okay. We just don't need to get bogged down in it. And that is a mistake I see with many, many campaigns, especially university campaigns. University endowments are very complicated and very, very big. And students are trying to come up with all the solutions for the administration of how they will divest. In actual, they write papers about it because they are such fantastic students. And I'm trying to tell them, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. Let's have the university just announce that they want to do it. They will hire experts to create some process in order to figure out ways of doing it, even if it's very hard. They will lean into that intention, leaning into that intention. And if in a year's time or 2 years' time, we look at their portfolio or we look at that implementation and we think it is lacking, that's when we keep organizing because we're still here. We're not going away. But at the first step, the first ask is for them to announce their commitment or their intention to divest.
Thank you so much, Dove. I know we're kind of running out of time, and I don't see any pressing questions popping up, but lots of comments in the chat of gratitude and lots of links being shared, and we will certainly send out an email with all the resource links and the recording.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I think it's very telling that we're over an hour and a half and we haven't lost many of the participants in this webinar. I think it was incredibly engaging, and you can tell in the chat and in all the engagement. So thank you all so much to our wonderful speakers for sharing their stories and for all of the work that you're doing. It's truly inspiring. And to everyone for spending this evening with us and engaging in this space to build solidarity and connections across campaigns and how we can pressure our municipalities to invest in our values. So there will be a follow-up email. We will send out the recording. It will include a post-event survey, which I have already put in the chat as well. Please fill that out when you get it, just to help us guide our next programs and figure out what resources will be most helpful. And I think we can just wrap with that. Thank you guys all so much. I really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank
thank you,
you.
thank you. Have a blessed day,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Find the joy.